Well, good morning. 4:59. I decided not to wait any longer. Been sitting here for approximately a half an hour. I think before I even begin today's video, I'm going to talk about yesterday's. Yesterday's video was probably the most spontaneous video I have ever done. I mean, from the time that I felt I was going to do it at night instead of in the morning, till the time that I actually started recording, I don't think more than 15 minutes had passed. It was that quick. I felt the impression and the impulse and followed it. Many of you have seen the results of that. Some liked it, others didn't, and I knew that would be the case. And so I want to just briefly address why I do things like that. If I had planned it, I would not have done it. I'm generally not a very impulsive person. Generally, I do plan things and I don't act quite with as much spontaneity as I did then. And having 2.5 drinks probably had a lot to do with it, because I'm not someone that drinks on a regular basis. There's no excuses, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's what it is. For a long time, drinking to me was a sin, just like dancing and a whole bunch of other things. I was raised where almost everything in my life was a sin, everything in life. I mean, it was, the list of prohibitions of things you weren't supposed to do was extremely long when I was growing up. That was the culture I grew up in. Everything was a sin. So when I started, I mean, I had a few drunk encounters when I was 19 years old. One before I went in the Army, one when I came home on leave from the Army while I was still a soldier. And then I didn't get drunk again. I mean, it was years. I mean, I went like 17 years or something like that without drinking anything at all, from 19 till 36 years old. I just simply stopped drinking because I got so drunk when I was 19. And I've only been really, really drunk where I didn't know what I was doing 3 times in my entire life. And yesterday's video was certainly not one of them. Most of the time when I drink, I'm very coherent, even though I might slur a word or two. That was interesting last night. So anyway, I'm giving you an explanation. And what I'm doing when I do these things of being real, I want you to get that spirituality is not about having some persona of perfection and never doing anything that some people consider sinful or wrong. That's not what it's about. Spirituality is understanding your relationship to the divine and having at least an inkling that you are divine as well. That's the essence of it, and that there is no separation. To me, that's spirituality in a nutshell. Anyway, the title that I gave for today's talk is I'm spiritual now, so why are there still problems? And I just wrote a blurb when I sat down. How long have we been living in the fairy tale land of spiritual make-believe? Maybe not everyone, but I know I have lived under the delusion that because I love God, everything was supposed to be wonderful in my life. There weren't supposed to be all these problems in my life once I became spiritual. Have you ever felt that way? I'm asking myself, which is why I'm pausing, do I really want to go where my thoughts are taking me? And I hesitate, but yes, I will go there. I didn't go to bed last night until between 11:30 and 12. And then just a little bit after 2 o'clock, I get called into a counseling session and actually spent over 2 hours till about 20 after 4 counseling a couple of people that were having some relationship issues. And I was trying to play moderator. And I have a big day planned today of things that I want to get done, and I'm actually allowing some nurturing in my life today, which I don't do very often because I don't have time. But today I actually have put aside some time for nurturing, and then I get called out after less than 3 hours sleep, less than 2.5 actually, of sleep. I get called out into a counseling session where I'm giving again. And I'm not complaining or anything. I'm just telling you that's where I've been. I did not spend a lot of time in meditation. I sat here for maybe a half an hour contemplating what I was going to talk about. I didn't even bother going back to bed when I came home, when I came back home from the counseling, if that's what you want to call it. That's what I'm calling it. Anyway, we have lots of problems in our lives. And there was a time in my life that if I allowed myself to slip, even just a little, like I gave in to the temptation to get a little bit of a buzz or do something that I'd been trained since youth as being wrong and sinful, then I'd beat myself up for being weak, for being human. And I've spent most of my life beating myself up because things didn't go exactly the way that I thought they were supposed to go for someone that had committed themselves to God as many times and as heartfelt as I have done throughout my life. I mean, life was supposed to be a whole lot easier. I mean, I really believed that. And even though there were times that I got it, there were many times that I also forgot it. I mean, I just have had trouble throughout my life dealing with being human. And that's why I do things like what I did last night. And that's why I talk about the issues that I talk about and the things that I talk about in my life. I want other people to understand that spirituality is about being grounded and down to earth. It's not some high in the sky, pious, false mask. It's not an image that we have to present to the world of some type of pseudo-perfection. The perfection is in being human. I'm learning that. I'm getting it. I've always known it. There's a part of me that's always known it. And yet there's a part of me that has always struggled for much of my life, struggling with being human. And I realized that my religion painted Jesus as some kind of a super saint that never did anything wrong, blameless, sinless. You know, and that's the image we had held up of Jesus of Nazareth, whom we call Jesus Christ. But it's not the truth. Jesus was human just as we are human. And that's part of the Antichrist message which permeates the Christian church. That Jesus had to be perfect in order to die for our sins, because God could only accept a perfect sacrifice. The whole idea of even requiring a sacrifice, from where I understand now, is insane. It's absolutely insane. Without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sins. What is the sin? The sin is believing we were separate from God. That's really what it is. Believing something that was impossible to be real. And accepting it as reality. That's where we missed the mark. Being convinced that we were guilty for feeling separate from God because we wanted to be separate from God. God died. That's what "give me my inheritance" means, as I explained a few days ago. God, die. That's what the prodigal son did. That's what the prodigal daughter did. God, die. I want to do this on my own. And there's been a tremendous amount of pain and a tremendous amount of growth that has resulted from us wanting to do it on our own. And God has been with us all along the way, even when we didn't know it, even when we weren't aware of it. And that's the key message and the central message that Spirit's been driving me towards for a very long time in my life. It's all about love. In fact, some of my family members would get frustrated with me sometimes when I'd talk to them, and they say, all you ever talk about is love, the love of God, the love of God. That's all you ever want to talk about is God's love. Because to me, that's the center of the whole thing. My religion is not Christianity, although I consider myself a Christian. Christianity, I don't consider a Christian religion because it's not primarily loving. It's primarily judgmental. It's primarily missing the mark itself because it's based on a false premise that separation is real. And not only is it real, but if we don't get it right, God's going to send us to hell forever and ever. I mean, I'm sorry. I used to think that there was some truth in that, and it really got to me. When family members would tell me when I was finally starting to break away and step into the truth, they'd tell me, Ron, you're going to hell. You're going to hell. And it used to hurt. It used to hurt like crazy. To have my own family, my own brothers and sisters, my own aunts and uncles, sometimes my own mother, misunderstanding and not getting that love was really what I wanted to focus on because it's what Spirit was making real to me. And I'd have all these problems and all these issues. Why am I having to face all this stuff, God? Isn't life supposed to be wonderful now that I've given my life to you consciously, and I've not just done it once, I've done it since I was a kid, over and over and over again. There's not been, I doubt, a year of my life that I was not consciously committed to something better and something more and something spiritual. It's been all I've ever known. And yet I've created all these problems. And why am I talking about that? Because I just was with two people. And each of them were looking at everything that was happening through their own issues. And they weren't really able to see how much they were just simply mirroring each other back and forth. Because that's how blinded we become in the illusion. And it's why there are still problems. Over the past year and a half or so, I've begun taking greater responsibility for my life than ever before and not feeling victimized. That's not something that was true most of my life. I was still operating a lot of the time as a victim. Not all of the time, because sometimes I did get it, and then I'd forget again, and I'd go back into the old patterns, the old habits of thinking and behaving. And I'd start feeling lonesome and feeling lack and feeling the separation. And I'd feel it all over again. Why is this happening to me? And I'd complain to God. I'd write some heartfelt poetry complaining to God. Where are you, God? Where are you? Because it hurt. And because we're getting spiritual now doesn't mean that the problems are going to go away. In fact, the underworlds and our unconscious are opening up like never before so that we can heal and come to grips and recognize that being human is really the challenge. To accept our humanity is to move into our divinity. It's easy living outside of duality, a life where we don't have all the challenges, but we come here to expand our consciousness and to grow up and to attain wisdom that cannot be achieved any other way. That's why it's happening. It's why we have all of these issues that come up. It's why I get called out at 2 o'clock in the morning to go and help people that I love and care about. It's why I share videos every day. It's why I allow myself to be human with you and vulnerable. Because this is human life. This is what humanity is all about. And it's about loving in spite of all the problems and the issues. I see I've gone over. I'm going to leave it at that. Have a beautiful day. I love you. Namaste.